On Wednesday, the Kings lose to a Pistons team without Cade Cunningham, without Bojan Bogdanovic. And then here we are on Friday with the Kings taking down the defending champs 135-106 in the Kings' probably most convincing win of the season. And that's just the NBA for you. Sometimes things just don't totally make sense. I mean, of course, there are reasons that you can look at where the Kings against the Pistons were coming off of the longest road trip of the season. And so that can be a tough game. And then the Nuggets in this one were without KCP or MPJ, and they were on the second night of a back-to-back. But still, you still shouldn't lose to the Pistons at home. And then it's still very unexpected to blow out the Nuggets in the fashion that they just did. But it is what I predicted coming into this 2-game home set, was we would lose to the Pistons and beat the Nuggets. And of course, that's what we do. And I think the funniest part of this game was how similar Fox's box score from the Pistons game looks to this game. You know, of course, it is better for this game against the Nuggets. But you look against the Pistons, 12 points, 7 assists, 3 steals. And then you look at this game, 15 points, 10 assists, 5 steals. So the numbers are up, but it's still, low points, way under his season average. But I don't think I've ever seen him play such a good 15-point or less game in his career. Even when he hasn't had it going offensively, he's been solid defensively this entire season. But I thought he just took it to a whole nother level in this one. He didn't let Jamal Murray get anything. He held Jamal Murray to 12 points, and he had, like I said, 5 steals. It felt like it could have been even more. He was just making life miserable for whoever he was guarding. And then also before that Pistons game, I had talked about how his playmaking had dropped off. And then he comes in, just drops 10 assists, and is constantly getting into the lane and creating for others. And he did that a lot of times by running the 2-man game with Sabonis, which is something that I've been asking for them to do more of, because I feel like we just haven't seen enough of Fox actually handling the ball and actually playing like a point guard. And that's what we saw. And I thought it led to a lot of success and one of his best games of the season, despite him only scoring 15 points. So a big bounce back for him, a big bounce back for the team in general, a big bounce back for Keegan Murray, who had scored 0 points against the Pistons. And then he came out and they clearly tried to get him involved early, but he missed his first 3 shots. He missed a very open 3, missed inside. But what I loved is he didn't lose confidence and he kept attacking. He took the Kings, 3 of the Kings' first 4 shots. And then a lot of times that's where he'll stop, whether he's scoring or not on those 3 shots. I feel like that's normally where he would kind of say, okay, now we got to get others involved, and he would take a step back. But he continued to attack when the chances were given to him, and it worked out really well, and he ended up shooting efficiently, 6 for 11. Like, didn't shoot it super well from deep, 1 for 4, but he still found ways to score. And so I thought it was an encouraging bounce back from him. And then he was also really good on the defensive side of the ball. And the Kings this entire game, well, maybe not the entire game, but for most of the game, they were really good on both sides of the ball. The first quarter, the Kings offense just wasn't getting much. They couldn't really get inside. The Denver's defense was doing a really good job. They got some open shots and were just missing them. And then Aaron Gordon was getting inside pretty easily. And, Jokic was drawing a bunch of attention, and the Kings were really struggling inside, and they were getting caught in no man's land about whether to double Jokic, and then that would create lanes for cutters like Aaron Gordon. And so the start was definitely not great. But then the Kings started pushing the pace, scoring in transition, and Fox was at the center of that. And then the bench came in, Monk, instant offense. But they were still struggling defensively. Jamal Murray was getting open. Justin Holiday was knocking down his shots, and he was getting open. I thought that the Kings were doing a good job of trying to have active hands, trying to get deflections. But when they wouldn't get those deflections, then it was leading to open shots. And I thought there were also a few poor closeouts that were unnecessary that led to some easy buckets inside. And then turnovers were a bit of a problem. The Kings had 16 in this game. Denver had 20. So, they were giving it right back. And it had a lot to do with the Kings' activity defensively. But when that bench came in, you had JaVale McGee come in. Again, no idea why he's still getting those backup center minutes. And he came in. Jokic immediately scored on him. And you're like, okay, it is Jokic, but he did a really poor job. Like, he gave him way too much space. Then he gambled for a steal that put the Kings all cross-matched all over the place. Gambled for a steal, like full court pressing for some reason. And then he got burned for another basket, and it was just going so horribly. And the Kings were trying to get him the ball in the pick and roll, and they kept getting picked off. And so the Nuggets went on a big 8-0 run, and a lot of that centered around JaVale McGee. Sasha came in, hit a 3. That was nice, but and Monk was scoring as well, but that bench offense was bad. The defense was even worse. But the Kings really salvaged the end of the quarter with Fox creating a Lyles 3 and then Monk getting that steal and 3 with 2 seconds left. And so the Kings were only down 3. So they were down 9, and then within 2 seconds they were within 3. And Monk kept us in it with 10 points off the bench. And he is the mid-range assassin now, which is pretty cool. But it definitely was not a very encouraging first quarter. But we were still in it. And with Denver on this second night of a back-to-back, it was just about, keeping it close and then just continue to push the pace. But then after that first quarter, well, guess who came in? Alex Len comes in. What I've been asking for, what everyone's been asking for, right? Alex Len finally playing the backup center. And just immediately, good things were happening. Sasha hits a 3, and that was off a Len screen, I'm pretty sure. And immediately, Len just makes the right play more often than not. Like, sure, he fouled Jokic one time on a pump fake on a jumper. Or I don't know, that was Aaron Gordon that he fouled. It's like, okay, that's not great, but that's one thing. JaVale came in and immediately did like 3 bad things in 30 seconds. Len does 1 bad thing per game, if even that. And obviously one guy wasn't the difference between the Kings crushing the Nuggets and the Nuggets obviously being ahead after the first quarter. But it sure helps to just play the better player off the bench. I mean, it's just so clear to me. But what was kind of funny about the second quarter was the non-Jokic minutes, non-Jokic, non-Sabonis minutes. They both sat at the same time. The Kings did not establish some massive lead in those minutes. Like, they were attacking the paint and getting stuff inside. Like, the Kings did a great job of just constantly attacking, and their cuts were amazing. Lyles going to the rim, Sasha cutting, like everyone cutting to the rim. And the passing was great. The offense just looked amazing. And they did a good job of pushing the pace again against a tired team. But they weren't getting a lot of stops at the start of that second quarter. And so the Nuggets were staying in it despite having, 2 of their starters out, and Jokic was sitting on the bench. And so that was definitely a little worrying. It looked more like the Nuggets were just missing some easy shots rather than the Kings defending well, especially around the rim. Like, of course, the Kings had to, they were contesting, but it's shots I thought the Nuggets should have made. But then Jokic came back in, and that's when the Kings really extended the lead. And that's kind of unheard of against the Nuggets. We saw a little bit of Davion Mitchell at the point. I was wondering if he was even going to be the backup other guard alongside Monk, because we did sign Keon Ellis, which I haven't talked about because that happened today. Keon Ellis got a 3-year deal, which great for him. I think he really deserves it as that 15th guy on the roster. I thought that the Kings might go to him now that the trade deadline is passed and that they signed Keon, so that Keon is available past the 50 active games mark that you get as a two-way player. But we stayed with Davion, and we played him as the primary ball handler at one point. And Sabonis was out there, but he immediately turned it over. That didn't look great. But that unit was still able to score because Keegan hit a 3, Herter hit a really tough movement 3. They were defending really well against Jokic, and Davion made a really nice play coming from behind Jokic to hit the ball out. But I don't love the lineup with Davion just as the primary ball handler. Like, that's not great to me. it worked because shooters were making shots. And the offense, it was flowing really well, but I just don't think that's going to happen on a night-to-night basis because there are going to be times where guys aren't hitting shots and we need someone to be able to create out of the pick and roll more or just create as a ball handler in some way. And so I definitely want to limit the amount of minutes that Fox and Monk are both on the bench together. It seemed like things were kind of swinging in Denver's direction when Sabonis had those 2 really bad turnovers leading to Nuggets scores, and he had the take foul on one of them. But then Fox stepped up, hit that big 3 to stop the bleeding, and he only took 2 threes in this game, and I thought they were both good attempts. And I don't feel like anyone really forced up 3-point shots. Like maybe you could say Lyles and Monk took some, but Monk was feeling it, Lyles was feeling it, and so there weren't too many just forced up threes, and I thought that was really important. The Kings just relentlessly attacked this Nuggets team, and I think it truly was just about them losing to the Pistons and wanting to have a big response in this one. The end of the second quarter, it wasn't great because you had Herter kind of turned down a shot at the rim to pass it back out to Fox so they could go 2 for 1, and then Fox gets stripped. Herter did a great job of getting back, and he stopped the oop, and then the Kings got a stop. But then again, you come up the floor and you're trying to kill all the time again. And Sabonis, I thought he could have taken the shot, but he's looking for Fox to be the guy at the end of the quarter. And I think the Kings a little too much look to Fox at the end of quarters. Like someone's got to look to shoot themselves. And so then he took a bad shot. So it was kind of a 2 for 1 turned into a 0 for 1. And I think the Kings have done that a lot this season. But in the third quarter, they did a much better job, and they went 2 for 1, where Fox scored, and then they forced a Jokic turnover. Fox got the steal, I believe, and then Fox kicked to Lyles for 3. And so they were able to convert the 2 for 1 at the end of the third quarter. So that was good to see after the Kings have really struggled with those 2 for 1 scenarios or just like holding the ball at the end of the shot clock. It feels like they rarely get a good shot. And we know that Fox is great in late clock scenarios, but you don't have to make it a tough shot every time. Like it's possible to try to get a better shot and to not have it be at the very buzzer every time. Like you can leave a few seconds still. But the Kings were up 10 at halftime. I thought Keegan's defense in the first half was really good, both on the perimeter and inside. Him, Barnes, and Sabonis were doing a really good job of just walling up inside, no matter who it was. Jokic, Gordon, Peyton Watson, it didn't matter who it was inside. They were just going straight up, and they forced a lot of misses around the rim. And Sabonis also, I thought he did a great job of staying in front of his man. A lot of times it was Jokic. Sometimes it was even Aaron Gordon that he was staying in front of. And so I thought he had a really impressive defensive game. But at the start of the third quarter, it was definitely a bit worrying because the Kings, they couldn't get to the paint on maybe their first 3 possessions. It was not for a lack of trying, but the Nuggets defense was just kind of locking us up. And then the Kings just started running. And it started with Fox just getting steals. He got 2 steals, and the Kings got their first 3 buckets in the third quarter in transition. So that was huge. And they got a tech on Jokic. They were just frustrating the Nuggets. And they just continued to pound the paint. And it was everyone. You had Keegan throwing a really nice pass inside to Sabonis. And that Keegan to Sabonis connection, it's so good. Keegan is the best on the team outside of Sabonis at throwing those passes to the paint from beyond the 3-point arc. And there were moments where Keegan was taking guys off the dribble. He pump faked in the corner, stepped in, hit a midi, then he took on Jokic and hit a fadeaway over him. You had Barnes hitting a fadeaway in the post, Monk coming in, instant offense. The Kings' offense just could not be stopped in that third quarter. They ended up scoring 39 points. And in the middle to late portions of that third quarter, both teams were just trading buckets. The Kings couldn't really get a stop either, but it didn't matter because the Kings just kept scoring. And a lot of it was Malik Monk. He twisted his ankle, but he was okay. And the only time either team wouldn't score was either when there was a weird travel called they were calling so many odd travels that didn't really look like travels, or when someone would just get fouled. After Jokic complained about not getting fouled, he got so many calls in a row, and the Nuggets had 6 fouls to the Kings, 1 in that third quarter. So complaining works. Like Fox got hit, clearly didn't get the call. And so the only time either team wasn't scoring was honestly the refs. But as long as the Kings just kept scoring, they were up 15, it felt like, for a long time, right around 15. And so it's like, as long as we're just maintaining this lead when Jokic is on the floor, that is huge. We also had Mike Brown successfully challenging, but not really, because Domas was called for a block and then he got hit in the face. But they called a foul earlier on Fox. Even if they didn't call that foul on Fox, I'm not sure they would have overturned the block, because obviously the Fox contact happened first, but maybe they only looked at that because they did overturn the block. I'm not really sure. But we get to say it's a successful challenge for Mike Brown. So I guess that's good. But then with that sequence I described at the end of the third quarter, going 2 for 1, Kings built a 20-point lead. But of course, I don't think any Kings fan was comfortable with that 20-point lead. I wasn't even comfortable at one point with a 30-point lead, and there was like 6 minutes to go. I wanted to feel comfortable. I couldn't get myself to feel comfortable with that lead, and I only got comfortable when there was like 4 minutes left. That's what this team has done to me. They've scarred me. But it was really nice in the third and even at the start of the fourth. The amount I've talked about this team not having killer instinct, not putting teams away, like they totally put the Nuggets away. Len was huge. He had that and one, and then he had a putback right after it. He got to the free throw line a lot. He was 3 for 5. Took the most free throws out of anyone on the Kings, which is pretty funny. And then you had the Fox steal leading to a Monk 3. That felt like the dagger. But then even after that, you had Herder with a really nice drive inside, and he did the little pump fake while still moving forward, while still going to the basket, taking another step, and then trying to lay it in. And I can't remember if he got the layup or if he got the foul. I think he might have been fouled, and then he made both free throws. So it was nice to see him take a page out of HB's book and get himself going inside there. And Herder just had a really nice game in general. Super efficient from the field. Made both his free throws, which is nice. The entire starting unit all made all of their free throws. Of course, Fox didn't take any. So, and he's the guy that's been struggling a lot. But so has everyone, really. And the Kings 16 for 18 from the free throw line. We'll take that every day of the week. But yeah, Herder with just 12 points, solid defense, using his length. His rotations were really good. All of the Kings' rotations were really good in this game. Malik Monk had a huge block, but he also had some nice moments as the low man. And it truly was just a complete performance by everyone. Like Harrison Barnes, he had some bad defensive moments, not getting around screens, leaving guys open. But he did a pretty good job of staying in front of Aaron Gordon for the most part, especially after the first quarter. And he was good offensively, so we'll take that. I don't even think I've talked about Sabonis, but Domas coming in and outplaying Jokic. Not an all-star, by the way. Not an all-star. 7 for 9 from the field, hit his 3. And of course got the triple-double. He's passed now Jokic in triple-doubles on the season. 17 points, 17 rebounds, 10 assists. No one in the starting lineup scored more than 17 points. But almost all of them scored in double figures. You had Barnes at 9 points as the lowest. It was just a super well-balanced attack. The bench was huge. The bench was doing the majority of the scoring in the first half. Lyles hitting 3 for 4 from 3 with 15 points. He had 7 rebounds. He really was working hard on the boards. And then you had Monk with 23, Len with 11, Sasha with 6. And I think that's all the points in the non-garbage time minutes. Len had some points in garbage time. But it was just a complete all-around effort and a complete flip-flop from that game against the Pistons. And so it's really nice to see, because that game against the Pistons was obviously so frustrated, and some people frustrated with the lack of movement at the trade deadline. I don't know if I'd say I'm frustrated. just a little disappointed that we didn't make some move. But this was a really nice game to lift the spirits and remind ourselves of what this team can do. I really think the only poor performance of someone that played in this game was JaVale McGee, who played 3 minutes. Because even Davion, who didn't have the biggest impact, had some nice moments. I thought he drew a charge that didn't get called. I think he got called for a block. Keegan Murray also drew another charge. But the passing, the ball movement, all the cuts, it was just so beautiful to watch. And I think this is what made last season's Kings the #1 offense in the NBA. And we haven't seen it as much this season. And Monte McNair talked about it in his press conference about how the Kings have made an improvement defensively, but they've also dropped off offensively. So the focus is more on getting back to where the Kings were offensively last season than really making any more improvements defensively. It's just about maintaining what we've already done defensively this season. And I think coming into the season, that's kind of exactly what we wanted in terms of just a slight improvement defensively, getting towards being average, which is what we've done, while maintaining the offense, at least to a certain degree, which we just haven't done enough of this season. But the offense looked amazing in this game. And it's also nice for Malik Monk to have some good games back to back after he struggled for 4 or 5 games there. It seems like he's broken out of that, because I think for those 4 or 5 games, we kind of saw the inconsistency that we saw a lot of the regular season last season. And so I was just hoping that it wasn't the case, and still am, that he's not back to last season's Malik Monk, because last season's Malik Monk was good, but this season's Malik Monk has been special. And he was back to being special in this one, even though he only had 2 assists, which is not really normal for him to only get 2 assists. The Kings turned it over quite a lot, trying to feed those pocket passes into Domas, also trying to throw it up to JaVale. And so from an offensive perspective, there's still something to clean up there, but I think the turnovers happened in a way that I'm happier with watching than when it's a turnover because someone's going ISO and then has to kind of make a crazy pass, or there's just not a lot of ball movement. So someone tries to kind of make something out of nothing and that results in a turnover. It's much better when the turnovers come out of a lot of ball movement and player movement. I mean, you look at the Warriors, prime Warriors still turn the ball over a lot because of how much they move the ball. So being a great offense doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to have those turnovers, but I do think how those turnovers come about can be kind of telling about how the offense is performing. It was also fun to watch a little garbage time. We saw Kessler Edwards, we saw Keon Ellis, Colby Jones, Davion Mitchell, and Alex Len was out there. So with Kessler Edwards, he went 2 for 3 from 3. And I think that's something we've seen anytime he's gotten time in garbage time. That's a lot of times. He's looked so confident shooting the 3. Like when he is open, he's going to take it. And he's been knocking them down at a pretty good percentage. But also when he's got limited minutes this season, meaningful minutes, I think he's made really smart decisions offensively. And so I think there are positive signs for him possibly becoming a rotational player. I'm definitely not totally sold on him yet, but I think there is that possibility for him. But then Keon Ellis, obviously his first game since signing that contract, and I was really impressed with his ball handling and his decision making more than I have been at any point this season. He didn't take a shot, but he was making all the right decisions with the ball. His passing was great. He had 2 assists. He had a really nice drop off to Alex Len, and he just had some other really nice passes. And I've never really seen him as a primary ball handler, and he still probably isn't that. But I think for playing possibly alongside Malik Monk, I think he's showing that he can be a really good decision maker. And so I would like to see him back in the rotation personally over Davion, because I think Davion, he had a solid game, and he's had some solid games since he's been in the rotation. I don't think he's played horribly, but I just think we can get more out of a guy like Keon Ellis. And so I hope he gets a shot. And then the last guy that I'm going to talk about is Colby Jones. And he had a really nice moment where he drove into the mid-range, stopped, turned around, and hit a nice fadeaway. And he also had a moment where he made a really nice drop-off pass to Alex Len inside, and Alex Len hit the floater. He looked good defensively, and I just thought it was a really nice garbage time to watch. And that has not always been the case. Like, I'm being very complimentary of everyone in garbage time. That's not just because I'm in a good mood because the Kings won. Like, we have seen some pretty bad garbage time minutes from this team earlier this season. I truly think that everyone looked pretty good playing in garbage time. And of course it's always nice for, you know, the net rating, offensive, defensive rating for the garbage time unit to come in and still make it look like a really impressive performance and not let the Nuggets claw back in a bit and make it look a little more respectable. Like, nah, we outplayed them. We deserve this 29-point win. We went 17 for 34 from three, shot 58% from the field, held the Nuggets to 46% from the field and 34.5% from three. And so we've given ourselves the opportunity to end this stretch going up to the All-Star break positively. Losing to Detroit isn't great, but now we've won against Denver, so I'm looking at this 5-game set going up to the All-Star break. We're 1-1 right now. Now we go on a tough road trip. Oklahoma City, Phoenix, and then Denver. They get a little bit of revenge because we'll be on the second night of a back-to-back in Denver. That's going to be really tough, obviously. But the next game is against Oklahoma City in Oklahoma City. It is right before the Super Bowl. Why? That just sucks. So I don't know. I hope I have time. I guess I'm just like right after the game going to record and try to get it out. I don't know if I'll get it out before the Super Bowl, but I'm watching the Super Bowl. I'm watching the Niners in the Super Bowl. So I don't know if it'll come out right after the game or way later that night, but that just sucks. The Kings are 2-0 against Oklahoma City this season, but both of those were in Sacramento. For the Kings, Chris Duarte, I didn't talk about this, but he is out and he'll be out for the next week or two. I honestly thought that could have been worse, but only a week or two. That sounds pretty good to me. And then the Oklahoma City Thunder will be without Gordon Hayward, who they just traded for, but they're not going to be playing him yet, I believe is what they said. Obviously, Oklahoma City going to be looking for a little bit of revenge. It'll be interesting to see what the Kings do about SGA, because De'Aaron Fox has been amazing defensively recently. So many steals. He's second in the league in steals per game behind SGA. So do they put Fox on Shea, or do they stick Keegan on him? It'll be interesting because Keegan has been struggling with fouling a bit lately. And so I think maybe it'll make more sense to put Fox on SGA and put Keegan on J-Dub. But you really don't want Fox to get in foul trouble. So that's a tough decision. But for the Kings, it's just going to be all about attacking the paint. I think if Sabonis has a good game inside against Chet, the Kings are going to have a really good opportunity to win this game because Oklahoma City just doesn't have the size to be able to defend Sabonis, and we've seen that in both games they've played this season. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Super Bowl Sunday, boo, to recap that game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Peace.